So part one, sort of section one, if you will. What is spine stability? Now, with regards to spine stability, I'm going to be talking about the lumbar spine. And the reason I'm going to be talking about the lumbar spine is that's where the low back is, number one. But also the thoracic spine has a skeletal structure that gives it stability. So it has the rib cage. So the rib cage is obviously bone, which attaches to all the way up the thoracic spine, and that gives it a degree of stability. So the muscular function for thoracic spine stability is partly there because of the bones, and then the muscles don't have to do as much work with regards to stability. But when it comes to the lower back, obviously there are no bones holding the vertebra in place. So the stability comes from the muscles that attach to the vertebra, because we've got the pelvis at the bottom, and then you've got S1, which is kind of or S1L5, which is the junction between the sacrum and the pelvis, and then the lumbar spine. So when we're talking about spine stability, we're talking about the 5 lumbar vertebra, because there are no bony attachments. It is just the muscles. So there are some sort of muscles that directly attach to it. So you've got multifidus. Now, multifidus generally gets talked about as one muscle, but it is many small muscles that attach each segment all the way up. Then you have quadratus lumborum, which attaches to all 5 lumbar vertebra, the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pelvis. So that has a major spine stabilizing effect. Then you have transverse abdominis, which essentially wraps all the way around the torso. Again, that plays its role. It's been over exaggerated, and its role has been over exaggerated. It does play a role, and there is an importance to it, but it's not of the importance that it's been given, in that it's just one player in the game. It's not a major player in the game. There are other players that are more major in the game, the QL being one of them. You've then got longissimus and iliocostalis. Although they don't directly attach onto the spine, they do attach into the thoracolumbar fascia, which attaches to the spine, and that gives a stabilizing effect to the lumbar spine as well. Then you have latissimus dorsi, which again attaches into the thoracolumbar fascia, which then directly attaches into the lumbar spine. So what we're looking at is all of these muscles on both sides of the body. They need to activate at the right time to hold the 5 lumbar vertebra in place. And if we can think of it like a sail on a boat or a mast on a boat, with all of the wires that come off the sail, and we have to tension them and release them as the boat is moving and changes direction. That's exactly what these muscles are doing. They're never completely slack, and they're never completely taut. They are always constantly heightening their activation and lessening their activation. But what does need to happen, just like on the mast of a sail on a boat, is it needs to be tightened at the right time, and it needs to be loosened at the right time. And that's what stability is. So first of all, we need the muscles to be able to time properly, to hold the spine in place. So as we change posture, change position, change direction of the body, those muscles are tuning in and timed and tightening and heightening their activation at the right time. Because if they don't, that's going to cause instability in the area, and then that's where spasms can take place, so on and so forth. And if there has been injury to a disc, so if there is some laxity in a disc, then there is more instability between lumbar segments, so L5, S1, L5, L4, L4, L3, whatever it may be. If there is some laxity there, or if there is some slack in the ligament because it's been overstretched or whatever, then there's going to be additional instability in the lumbar spine. So that's what we have to create with that muscle activation. It has to hold those 5 vertebrae in place to maintain that spine stability. So that is what I'm talking about when it comes to spine stability. When it comes to core strength, and what we have to understand is what core strength is, which is the ability to tolerate load. So first of all, we have to get the muscles timing and turning on at the right time. Then we have to get them to an ability to bear load and tolerate greater load. Now, core strength isn't even step 2 in this. So spine stability would be step 1. Core strength would be further down the line. So it might be step 3 or step 4. There is a step in between that, which is core endurance. So we need the spine stability, we need the muscles to activate at the right time, we need core endurance for them to be able to do that for a period of time. Then we can start adding strength into the mix once they can do things for a long time, and then we can start getting them to bear more load. Because if they can bear load once, but they can't do it 50 times, then we've got a problem, or then we're going to have a problem. So the core strength is the ability of your core muscles to tolerate load. And by core muscles, I'm talking about the ones that I've mentioned, plus rectus abdominis, internal, external obliques, so on and so forth. So there are muscles there to do it. When we're talking about core strength, we're more talking about, let's just say, fitness and performance. When we're talking about health of the core and health of the spine, core strength is sort of in the mix, but it's a bit further on. You may start to build it, but it's a bit further on. So what the advantages of core strength are is, again, the ability to bear load, but you aren't going to be bearing load unless you're in a more fitness and performance environment, or if your job requires you to lift heavy things, but even the core stability and the core endurance needs to come into that, because if it's a job where you have to lift heavy things, then you need to be able to have the endurance to be able to do that over a period of time because it's your job. So what we are talking about when it comes to core strength is the ability of the muscles basically to compress around the spine. So we've got the muscles timing in the right way. Now they're starting to compress around the spine to hold it in place. So as the load gets greater, the muscles need to be able to hold the spine in place to match that ever greater load. So we've got the stability there, they're timing at the right time. Then we need to put the ability to bear that load into it, which is where core strength comes from. And there's a very important point that I want to make here, because it's going to become more apparent when we talk about what not to do and what to do, which is this thing called hoop stresses. Now, hoop stresses are, if you can imagine like an old sort of wooden barrel, beer barrel or whiskey barrel or something like that, and it's got the planks of wood, and then it's got those metal sort of hoops that hold it together. Well, the hoop stress is the pressure or the force being exerted on the wood and on those sort of metal hoops that go around it and hold the barrel in place. That's what hoop stresses are within our core. So we've got an intra-abdominal pressure, which is pushing out, and then we've got the ability of the muscles to hold all of that intra-abdominal pressure in, and the force that's generated is known as a hoop stress. So that greater hoop stresses require greater strength to hold it all in place, because there's going to be a greater intra-abdominal pressure, therefore there's going to be greater hoop stresses, and that's where core strength comes in. And I won't add any more to that. I'll start to talk more about that when we get into parts 2 and part 3. So for now, just to quickly summarize part 1, spine stability is the ability of the muscles around the spine to heighten their activity at the right time to be able to hold the 5 lumbar vertebrae in place. Then we have which we haven't talked about, which is core endurance, but not a lot of people talk about it. We need that to be able to maintain that activity over a period of time. Then we need the core strength to be able to bear the load, to manage the hoop stresses, to be able to hold everything in place. With regards to the intra-abdominal pressure that's pushing out, we need that force of the muscles to push in, and the hoop stress is there to be managed by those muscles. So what we're going to talk about next is what not to do.